Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather tonight. We know you have a lot of choices in finding your weather information. This is just one way to keep you and your village and community informed. Other ways that are really handy and easy to use, the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391. Weather.gov/Alaska is a great way to find us online, and one click will get you to your local weather forecast office, your Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center, or links to your Alaska Aviation Weather Unit and Tsunami Warning Center, certainly found on that page as well. If you can't find what you're looking for, please do let me know. david.snider@noaa.gov is the easiest way to find me online. It's been a warm day across parts of southeast with high pressure sitting across British Columbia. We've seen temperatures soar into the 50s and 60s. That 70-degree reading right there is AKwx, and because of that 70-degree reading, that is the warmest recorded temperature at or above 70 degrees, I believe, for Alaska in March. So a very warm day and a very warm reading just for that location itself. But you can notice that temps up into the northern part of the Gulf, around Yakutat especially, have been pushing that warm level as well. That is a record high for them. And many locations there in southeast have also been fairly mild. Mild enough, in fact, to get a sea breeze going, which means that there's enough sun heating the earth. The earth is creating rising air as air moves away from it. That convection is pulling in air off of the water. That's a sea breeze. And of course, the sea breeze likes to cool us down. But the fact that we have a sea breeze in March is pretty meaningful to me. So, I mean, summer's coming. So, those of you who are looking for warmer weather, you certainly have it in southeast today and should have another mild night and daytime tomorrow. Not true for everyone, though. Winter weather continues for many parts of southeast. Along the eastern Alaska range, a south gust up to about 50 miles per hour is possible through tonight and early tomorrow morning until about 10 o'clock or so, generally west of Delta Junction and in some of the mountain passes. Don't be surprised to run into some gusty weather there. Winter weather advisories continue for the Brooks Range on the north and south side. That means Arctic Village and along the highway, and across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. A winter weather advisory for you continues there. That has been a change, though, from what was a blizzard warning to now a winter weather advisory. So you still have a weather alert. It's just not as intense as it was before. Visibility could be down to about a half mile, which is better than a quarter mile of what we see for blizzard. And gusty conditions there should be improving. We still see the possibility of about an inch or so of accumulation through tonight and into the early morning hours of tomorrow. And we expect to see similar conditions there across the western Arctic coast from Wainwright to Point Hope. There could be some stronger gusts, poor visibility, and maybe some light snow accumulation in that region. Other than that, conditions seem to be improving across the region for southeast. Again, plenty of sunshine there with high pressure in charge of the entire area, bringing in that strong southerly flow into south central, southwestern Alaska, and certainly pushing that moisture and warmth into the interior. This is all being a kind of a dual conveyor belted into south central. You can see low pressure sitting here across the north parts of the Pacific. That strong southerly flow is working its way into the Bristol Bay region. The YK Delta seeing additional cloud cover, and along this boundary we're getting some snow falling across the region. We expect to see that boundary pushing northward as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, and that's going to take that snow focus now and push it a little bit more into northwestern Alaska and into the Yukon Delta. That should also keep a healthy southeasterly flow across southeastern Alaska, but we do expect to see a little more cloud cover for you. So this intense heating that we've experienced today probably won't be back in quite the same fashion tomorrow or for your Thursday. As you look at that southerly flow, you'll also think that freezing levels are going up across the region. So as this moves northward, we would expect to see a better chance for rainfall across more interior locations in the coming days and a better chance for higher elevation snow rather than rainfall there. So as you look at the weather map, high pressure sitting out over British Columbia, a beautiful day in southeast, light rainfall across northern parts of the Gulf. High pressure is also sitting across the Yukon Delta, and that is pushing colder air inland a little bit more. A little bit of a dip in that colder air coming into the Brooks Range, and with that, some areas of light snow and wind, of course, because all those isobars are crushed together and that wind's just moving around and creating a little bit more of a blustery situation in close confinement there across the north and eastern part of the state. Another surge of cooler air is trying to make its way in across the northwest coast, and several other weaker surges lined up across the northern Bering and eastern Asia. That's not going to last the night, though. It looks like warmer air is going to win as high pressure is trying to work its way into the weather picture. That should fall apart as well. The main point would be that low pressure sits across the western Gulf. We still have a healthy southeasterly flow keeping things mild in southeast. Another weather disturbance will keep some snow passing over south central Alaska, but with high pressure working its way across the northern coast, we'll start to see the weather calm down across the north coast as we head into tonight and tomorrow. And then the next weather maker across the western Bering probably won't stand a chance because high pressure is going to take over across most of the northern Bering Sea. So this is good news for Norton Sound and parts of the Yukon Delta coastline. We've been watching ice grow rapidly here across Norton Sound, and while it's not very thick ice, it is high concentration ice, which is good. This will be moving southward as we head into the next 3 to 4 days or so, so continue to watch the ice grow as we move into this cooler period for the west coast, but again, it's probably not going to last a very long time, even though it is here for a short time. Colder air is moving in across the western Arctic coast as we head into your Wednesday afternoon. With that, we expect to see some snow showers out ahead of it, and warmer air is moving northward. That'll be a focus point for some areas of light snow all across the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound down toward the Yukon Delta, and across the eastern Brooks Range. Watch for some gusty winds across some of the highways and into that region as we get into Thursday afternoon, probably some additional inch or two with that. Rain will be spreading across Prince William Sound, the Seward Peninsula, all the way down to Kodiak Island in the Alaska Peninsula here, and southeast probably picks up some areas of light rainfall as we get into Thursday as the front actually backs away from southeast as we get toward the end of the week. So gusty conditions still out over the open water thanks to low pressure hovering around 960 millibars. Let's take a look at temperatures as we get into your Wednesday morning. Pretty mild stuff for southeast, 30s and 40s for you. Mid to upper 30s for most of Prince William Sound and the Cook Inlet region. Homer might be a little bit cooler, 36 around Kodiak. Teens and 20s for the interior, Fairbanks near 19. And we still have winter across the north and western parts of the state, anywhere from 5 to 15 below. Nome looking at 4 above. Unalakleet about 10, 20s for Bristol Bay, and 30s for most of the Alaska Peninsula out toward the chain. St. Paul holding on to 24, a high of 32 there tomorrow. Mid-40s for Fairbanks in the middle Tanana Valley. Cooler as you head up toward Tanana and areas up toward Ambler and Bettle still in the teens and 20s. South Central we expect to see highs in the Cook Inlet region in the lower to mid-40s. Pushing 55 possible for Cordova tomorrow, and 50s and 60s back again for southeast. So warmth for you for at least another day, but maybe not as warm as it was today. Look for 20s and 30s for overnight temps for Thursday morning in the interior, and temps still well below zero across the northwest coast, anywhere from 10 below to 20 below. It looks like about 4 below in Nome, that colder air kind of sinking into the Seward Peninsula. That'll help ice growth. Unalakleet about 9 down toward Hooper Bay and Bethel, temps in the low to mid-teens. Above freezing for parts of Bristol Bay, 36 in Kodiak, 36 for Cordova as well, and warmer on Thursday.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And on to your aviation weather now. IFR will be fairly widespread over the open waters of the Gulf, creeping into Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, and the Pacific coastline of the Alaska Peninsula, and also into western sides of Prince William Sound, not entirely down the Kenai Fjords region, but getting there. Marginal conditions will be a little more likely tomorrow morning around Cook Inlet than anywhere else. And across the upper end of the Yukon Valley along the Alcan and northwestern Alaska, probably more likely to see inland areas of IFR. Southeast starts off in the clear. VFR looking pretty good for flying tomorrow morning there. MVFR conditions for most of the Aleutians. You'll see that changing quickly as we get into the afternoon, with IFR spreading up inland across southwestern Alaska, mainly south of the Yukon Valley and into the Kuskokwim Delta. IFR conditions also overtaking a large part of Kodiak Island, moving up Cook Inlet, but generally the western side, so into the Susitna Valley itself. Prince William Sound looking at IFR conditions there, filling in across the Gulf, and most of southeast once again still looking at VFR conditions, as is the northwest coast, the Arctic coast itself, and the upper Yukon Valley and the upper Tanana Valley. And that gradually changes as we get into Thursday morning. Looking for IFR across northern parts of southeast all the way down the outer coast, but marginal conditions from about Juneau southward. As you get into the Gulf itself, IFR conditions around Prince William Sound, south of that marginal. IFR through most of Kodiak Island and a large part of the coastal areas of Bristol Bay. You'll see MVFR a little bit further out toward the Pribilovs. And then IFR stretching up the Yukon Valley into the eastern Beaufort Seacoast and along both sides of the Brooks Range summits there. As you get into the afternoon, look for IFR across the Brooks Range, especially the eastern 2/3 or so. IFR around Prince William Sound and down the Kenai Fjords, along the Alaska Range in the west, and then hit and miss down the southwest coast over the Alaska Peninsula and across the central and eastern Gulf, with IFR likely across Chilkoot and White Pass. South of that, a mixture of VFR and MVFR conditions for afternoon conditions in southeast. For your northern passes then, we look at AKwx and we say it's pretty good tomorrow. VFR conditions are expected, but there's a little bit more likely chance that you're going to start to see MVFR creeping in around Adigan Pass as we go. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass expected to see IFR conditions developing by the afternoon and holding there. Rainy Pass probably doing the same thing, marginal to start, but an IFR kind of finish. Windy Pass expected to start marginal levels there and pushing toward IFR as the day goes on. And the further east you go, it looks like some of this will start to change a little bit more toward Isabel Pass, maybe getting into some IFR. And then Metasta Pass probably holding on to visual flight rule most of the day for your Wednesday. Tonita Pass, we expect to see a marginal start with an IFR kind of a wrap up in the afternoon. Portage Pass looks to be IFR really most of the day. There may be some midday flirtations with marginal levels there, but chances are it's IFR all the way. Chilkoot and White Pass should see improvements as the day goes on, but remember, Thursday morning looks to push over hard to IFR at least for a little while. Freezing levels indicate a lot of warm and wet air hovering across the central and eastern Gulf and over southeast especially. You can see the surface freezing line hugging south central all the way down the Alaska Peninsula and over the higher train of southeast. Everything north of that, of course, is still below freezing in the morning, but to get to the really warm air, you have to climb up over southeast above 8,000 feet. Icing potential is a little bit different, though. This is where the moisture and the cold air meet up, and we're seeing those levels around 8 to about 10,000 feet across the middle and lower Yukon Valley and southwest, and about 8 to 10,000 feet across south central. And you'll notice that icing risk really falls off as you get south of Sitka and south of Juneau. But north of that, which includes Haines, Skagway, Gustavus, anywhere up toward Prince William Sound, those levels are there. They're above 8 to about 10,000 feet, though. They fall off very quickly as you move west of Nikolsky to below 5,000 feet. High pressure right now is taking over the northwestern parts of North America. You can see that strong southerly flow working across Prince William Sound and southwest and south central Alaska at around 60 to 95 knots, and then bending over back into the flow across northern parts of North America. The Pacific jet stretches well to the south, though, of Alaska, so we don't have any major concerns with this until it starts picking up moisture and pushing that northward into the Gulf once again. That's happening at around 100 knots. The overall flow, southerlies across the Gulf, 50 to 55 knots. Southerlies across the interior, about 30 to 55 knots. High pressure sitting across the western Bering, and that's giving us low pressure across the Chukchi Sea with a southwest flow over northwestern Alaska, and the ridge again trying to slow things down across the chain. Low pressure is a little more in charge at 3,000 feet. A southeasterly flow into southeast around 40 knots and also about 35 knots over the Kenai Peninsula. More of an east-southeasterly flow across the interior. North of the Brooks Range, that's a westerly flow, and northeasterlies across the Bering, 35 to 40 knots. Turbulence potential, considerable moderate. Most of the coastal areas of the Gulf below 8,000 feet, 4,000 feet across southeast, and below 4,000 feet in the western parts of Alaska.
When you think of a national park, you probably envision wide open natural spaces undisturbed by human activity. There are indeed such places, but even in some of the most remote areas of a place like Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska, the mark of man is present. Marine debris is a menace to the farthest reaches of our globe, and even designated national park lands are not immune. In the summer of 2009, the Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance, a grassroots conservation organization based in Seward, Alaska, decided to do something about the marine debris fouling the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park. Marine debris coordinator Tim Johnson had first-hand experience with the issue.
The summer before, my wife and I, Michelle, had done a paddle from Seward, sea kayak paddle from Seward to Homer. Really, our eyes were open to some areas that we didn't realize there was so much accumulation. It was very deceiving up front. You couldn't really get a feel for the extent and impact of it. You've got this nice high tide line that's quite pristine, and you really don't get a picture for the impact and the amount of debris in that area until you get behind those storm berms. You get back into the lagoons and the vegetation around those lagoons. And then you see the absolute extent back into that veg and how intertwined and enmeshed these decades of trash deposition. So we were just appalled by that and said we got to get something together on a larger scale.
The Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance is a local nonprofit community organization, and they have been instrumental in helping the Park Service obtain funding to get larger boats to help move the debris, and they get volunteer labor and organize the work trips. And so it's really a partnership between the Park Service and the community to help get out and really get a project done that in and of itself any one group couldn't do on their own.
Most of that trash was baggable. However, there were large items, huge, piles of hauser line, for example, that we just had to hoist up onto the boat.
The volunteers didn't just bag, haul, and hoist the garbage, but also carefully recorded what types of debris were collected.
In many ways, the debris itself is a resource. Archaeologists use middens, the trash heaps, as a way of analyzing past cultures, and in one sense marine debris is a form of a midden. It's a trash heap that left for the future would be something that people could use to analyze our culture. It may not say the best things about our culture or everything that we want, but we need to be able to document what we've done so that we can preserve that legacy, make sure that we as a society don't forget what we've been doing.
We had two larger categories of marine debris that we picked up. Commercial fishing means like, say, gill nets, large hauser lines, anything that would be associated with more of a commercial fishing scale. And then the second category was more recreational fishing and household, which would be general plastics, things like that. So we had about a 75% of the commercial fishing marine debris element, and about 25% of the recreational and household further out the bay. And we had the exact opposite the closer we got to Seward. Within the bay, it was about 25% commercial fishing versus 75% recreational fishing and household.
The trash is not just unsightly for park visitors, but also poses threats to wildlife and marine habitat.
Really one of the larger issues now that you go to this plastic that can really get into the food web and affect the food web differently than something like glass.
These substances, for instance, all these polystyrene blocks that are breaking down into all these little crumbly bits are further breaking down on a microscopic level, and how much of an impact that has, in this ecosystem is yet to be determined, but I think it's got pretty high potential.
Well known that sea turtles will eat plastic bags floating in the water. They look like jellyfish to a sea turtle, and obviously a plastic bag doesn't go well in the digestive system of a turtle. Albatross will see small pieces of plastic floating on the surface and think they're small fish and other food sources and eat that in their stomachs, especially in some of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. They'll find dead albatross that have starved to death with a full stomach, and it's full of pieces of plastic.
We're affecting our local areas this way, but we need to be thinking about it from more of a state and global, international scale. And most importantly, to try and focus on prevention of it coming in the first place. Because we're just going to see this continuing, to build up on our beaches unless we're able to get a little bit more of an approach on prevention on the front end.
Marine debris is really a global problem, in all the oceans, and there are many different sources. Global shipping is one. Fishing debris from commercial fishing, recreational boating activity on land, stuff blowing off land, washing down streams, people just throwing stuff on the shore.
Though the problem can seem overwhelming, Johnson remains upbeat about making a positive difference.
No, you gotta start locally. You gotta take control of what you can do, and make something with that, and try and move on from there.
Overall, more than 9 tons of debris was removed from the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park and transported back to Seward to be deposited in a landfill.
People gave a lot to the project in order to make it happen. That was awesome. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. Being able to put that large of a group of volunteers together, dedicated volunteers to put that much effort and give that much time and pull all the different agencies together to see it all happen was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah, very fulfilling experience.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And time for your Sea Ice Edge update. You'll notice high concentrations of ice all the way across the Bering Strait around St. Lawrence Island, now south toward the Yukon Delta. This is expected to move southward even more toward Nunivak Island, maybe even just beyond it in the coming days. But this trend is probably not going to survive the week because a southerly flow is expected to develop out across the western Bering toward the early parts of next week, and will probably chew up a lot of this very not thick ice. While highly concentrated, the thickness of this ice is pretty shallow, so I wouldn't expect this to continue and really last a great deal longer than the next several days there. That's the latest from our Sea Ice team. You can always get the latest outlook information and the forecast there at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. In southeast, the winds have been pretty light. Because of that, it has been a warm day in places like Craig and Klawock and Annette, around Ketchikan, up north toward Gustavus and Yakutat. Things have been fairly mild as well. That should continue with light winds on the inside passage there, looking at about 10 to 15 knots from the south and east, and 2 to 3 foot seas, anywhere from 20 to 30 knots coming up the outer coast, though, looking at about 10 to 11 foot seas there on Wednesday. And by Thursday, you can see higher winds and higher seas creeping eastward as a front gets closer to the outer coast. The wind should pick up there a little bit more as well. On the inside, though, not so much. Looks like the Lynn Canal is going to hold the wind down a little bit, so it does look like another mild day on Thursday. Winds 15 to 20 there across central and southern parts of the inside passage, 3 to 4 foot seas, while you're looking at outside waters coming up to about 12 to 14 foot seas on Thursday. For South Central, a little bit of a different story. Stronger winds there across the Barrens, 35 to 40, 11 to 20 foot seas. They're the strongest winds and highest seas west of the Barrens, for sure, in southern Cook Inlet. 35 knots inside of Prince William Sound, 7 foot seas there. Northerlies coming down the inlet to 40 knots past Kenai. Anywhere from 10 to 16 foot seas in the open waters. As we get into Thursday, things settle down a little bit in the north. Still looking at stronger winds coming down the inlet, though. 30 to 40 south of Kenai with seas to 18 feet. 14 to 16 foot seas in the western Gulf. 35 knots outside of Hitchenbrook Entrance. 25 knots on the inside with 6 foot seas there through Prince William Sound. Across Bristol Bay, northeasterly winds, 25 knots coming down Alaska Peninsula, anywhere from 6 to 7 foot seas there, 14 foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait with the northeast wind, and 25 to 30 knots elsewhere on the east and southern side of Kodiak Island. You're looking at 13 to 14 foot seas as we go. For Thursday, east and northeasterly winds continue across the Bristol Bay region, 5 to 9 foot seas there. North and easterly winds coming into Kodiak Island. Should be a pretty good wind coming over the mountains, 14 foot seas there for you in Shelikof Strait, 35 knots over the water, and northerlies coming off of the Alaska Peninsula, 25 knots with 11 to 14 foot seas in the region. For the Aleutians, look for a north and easterly wind for the central and eastern chain, anywhere from 30 to 35 knots, 10 to 14 foot seas, 17 foot seas on the south side. North and easterly winds coming in, wrapping around a ridge of high pressure, so a quick change around there in the west from Kiska to Attu. 9 to 11 foot seas there on that 20 to 30 knot wind. You can see winds and seas settle down just a little bit more as we get into Thursday thanks to that high pressure ridge, but it is channeling that northerly flow anywhere from Atka to Unalaska, and 25 to 30 knots should be expected with higher seas also being pushed toward Unalaska and Nikolsky on the northern side, 13 to 14 feet. On the south side, a little more protection, 7 to 9 foot seas expected for Thursday. For the west coast, north and easterly winds working over the region. You can see 20 to 40 knots there, the strongest of which will be from Hooper Bay to Makoriak out towards St. Matthew. Anywhere from 9 to 12 foot seas there in ice-free waters, 8 to 12 foot seas also around St. Paul, St. George, and south of Nunivak Island and the Kuskokwim Delta. For Thursday, winds don't change a whole lot, 30 to 35 in most areas, 11 to 15 foot seas, the highest of which will be around the Pribilofs. Northerlies over the ice, pushing that ice edge further south as we go. For your Thursday afternoon, 12 foot seas there north of Nunivak Island. For the North Slope, west and southwesterly flow for the northwest coast, southerlies over the ice, 10 to 15 for Wednesday. For Thursday, northerly strengthened from Cape Lisburne southward to Kotzebue Sound, 30 knots there into the Bering Strait, and light winds generally for the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast, 10 to 15 expected there for Thursday. A quick recap of tonight's weather. Very mild conditions continue for southeast. We expect to see some pockets of snow generally over the higher terrain and rain mixed with snow across lower terrain areas around Cook Inlet. A winter weather advisory for the Brooks Range and the eastern Arctic coast there. For the Beaufort Seacoast, a blizzard warning has been dropped. You're now left with a winter weather advisory for visibility down to about a half mile and some stronger gusts in the region that'll take you through the early morning hours. As we get into Wednesday, expect snow and blowing snow for the northwestern coast. A frontal boundary moves into the Gulf Coast itself, bringing more rain to south and western locations, Kodiak Island, and more clouds for southeast. Mild weather will continue for you, though, as that front backs away. You're back into a southeast flow, and snow starts to form across the west and the northern parts of the state. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. All these images are online for you anytime. We'll see you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.